Jamie Smith, thank you so much for being here and chatting with Sioux Falls Simplified about your run for mayor of Sioux Falls. We have a ton of questions to get through. Well, not a ton, but a good number of topics to hit. A lot of the questions came from readers, and kind of, I tried to really be representative of what people want to know before they head to the ballot box. But I think the best place to start is just at the beginning of why are we sitting here? Why did you decide to run for mayor?
I've been a servant leader all my life. It's who I am. It's in my DNA to lead and to help others. And so, having been born and raised here in Sioux Falls, this, in my world, there wouldn't be a better job for Jamie Smith. Okay, I love this city. I love serving others. And so, coming out of the governor's race, the question was, if not that, where can I best serve? Yeah. Already at that point, we identified this as something that we were going to do. And I just can't wait for the opportunity to take Sioux Falls into the next century, really. It's amazing the things that are happening here.
Yeah, fantastic. We're going to start and get the really controversial stuff out of the way. Sioux Falls is known for, having a ton of restaurants. If you could eat at one Sioux Falls restaurant for the rest of the year, where are you going?
Oh, that is so... One?
I told you it was the hot seat.
That is a tough question. If I had to pick just one, I'm going to go with... That's a terrible question to ask, but I'm going to get you. I'm going to go see my friend Michael Haskett at MV Haskett's, because the variety that he can come up with, and the chef and the stuff that the ingredients he uses and how he comes out. I think we're going to go see Haskett, and the conversation is always
well. And you get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So
correct.
Some strategy.
So we're going to go to Haskett's.
That's a great pick. I love their brunch especially. I want to dig in on housing. That was the sort of number one issue that came up for readers of what they want to hear from their public officials about. So we have sort of two different tenets to talk about here, but what is your philosophy when it comes to addressing homelessness in our community? And what, if anything, would you do differently to what's being done under the current administration?
Yeah, it's a real issue. So when we're talking about homelessness, it's an all of the above approach that we have to take. The first that we have to look at is the immediate need, okay? People needing a place to stay, especially on those cold nights, things like that. So do we have those places available through partnerships with different organizations in the city? I was a big fan in the past with the county and the city going together in the Safe Home. I think it has worked well. It has done what they said it would. We need more, though. We need to continue, down that direction. The other thing, though, is when we look at the root causes of people and not having homes, it's an affordability issue. It comes to substance abuse issues. It comes to mental health. And all of those things. So by addressing the needs that people have in those areas, we can also attack that problem. We also passed a bill I brought to the legislature this year that allows the Department of Corrections not only to release an inmate once they're out of prison into the community, but they'll be allowed to transport them back to where they resided prior to being incarcerated. Because we're often seeing people do their time, they get out, they don't have a safe place to stay, and they end up also being on our streets here in Sioux Falls. So we need to help with that. It's an all-above approach, and it's always going to be a problem. Yeah. We can never ignore it. We need to probably put a little more effort, though, into that area as well.
Yeah. The other kind of component of housing that I wanted to talk to you about is affordable housing or workforce housing, accessible housing. There's a bunch of different terms for it, but what role do you think the city should play in addressing those needs in our community?
The city provides a framework for all of the discussions that happen in those areas. They provide the opportunity to bring the entities together that can help solve that problem. I've sat on the board of Affordable Housing Solutions now for years. That is an organization that works with Sioux Falls Housing and the Sioux Falls Housing Authority to make sure that we have places in our communities that people can live that have lower incomes. And so the need is great, the wait list is great. Yeah. And we know that. So it comes down to creativity, different things that we can do. I'm a big advocate of building up where we can, providing housing. I think every time we look at a strip mall, imagine housing above that strip mall.
Yeah.
Because there's square footage there that we can use. The infrastructure is already there. We can then make sure that we're creating housing at the lowest possible price to then also pass that along, hopefully, to the thing. But it's also working with the state to make sure that folks have housing. With the infrastructure bill that we had and passed in the legislature that allows for the build out of new developments. It's very important to use the different programs across our state to make sure that we can build housing that people can afford.
Yeah. Let's talk public safety a little bit. It's been a top priority of Mayor Paul Tenhaken. The department's grown pretty significantly under his tenure, despite that's kept crime rate pretty flat per capita, down this year a little bit. How would you approach balancing the public safety needs of the community with the budget realities facing the community?
So budget realities are always there, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Public safety, though, is the number one job of any mayor. And if they don't tell you that, that's not the reality. People expect that. It should be there and they should be safe. We have done a nice job in Sioux Falls, but we can always do better. And so working and continuing to do the different things that have been going on currently, I think Chief Toom does a fabulous job and want to continue to work with him on initiatives that he's working on. Mm-hmm. I also want to go further. I know that they are working on different things. A lot of some of the worst crime that happens in our city, we've identified who is doing this and maybe the networks of different things that are going on. But how do we get in there and help do things before bad things happen? That is something that we want to work on too. And I know that's something the chief wants to work on too, is identifying where these problem areas are and then seeing what we can do together. Again, it's not always the city that has to do it, but the city has to provide the framework for people to know what these problems are and to make sure that we have people stepping up to address those issues.
Another public safety question that came up from a number of readers. Do you support collaboration between the Sioux Falls Police Department and federal immigration officials?
I believe that those are two very different things, and I think the city is here to make sure that our citizens are safe and provide to be those trusted people in our community that all of us can go to for help. And I do not believe in turning our Sioux Falls police into an arm of the federal government.
Fair enough. I want to switch gears here and talk a little bit about arts. The city is currently in the process of developing a master plan, arts and culture master plan. And a recent survey shared with council showed that most residents in the city do support city funding for the arts. How would you personally approach decisions about funding public art projects and kind of incorporating that into the broader community?
Well, the arts is something very near and dear to my heart. My number two son, actually a musical theater major down in Lincoln, Nebraska, at Nebraska Wesleyan. I am a musician, a singer, an actor. My wife, my number one son, all of us, arts has been very important. I served on the Sioux Falls Arts Council as well back in the day. These things are near and dear to my heart. I believe an investment in the arts is an investment in our community. We did a study years ago when I was with Nan Baker. Actually, she was on school board.
Oh, sure, yes.
We did a study, and it was back then. It was between $7 and $9 for every dollar invested that we got back. The multiplier was huge on investing in the arts. We want to continue that. We're an active community in Sioux Falls. I love that we are sports oriented. I love that we have that. But we also, I believe the arts is right up there. It should be not second to, but equal to when it comes to those opportunities. I really see Sioux Falls growing in the next years as going even further than we already have and becoming that the centerpiece for the arts in this region.
Fantastic. I also want to talk about sustainability. The city has, over the last couple of years ago, developed a sustainability plan. There haven't been a ton of action items that have come from that, but I'm curious of what your approach would be to, incorporating sustainability, protecting the natural resources of Sioux Falls, in particular balancing that with continued growth and development.
When it comes to waste management in our city and water, these are two things that you constantly have to think of. I want to do something with our garbage plan. We have so many different garbage companies going up and down our streets on different days. If we could somehow work on that route schedule or something, that would be absolutely fabulous. The other thing is recycling, though, within our communities. We know that especially in apartment buildings in town, there are some of them that aren't providing that place for that recycling to happen. We have great partners in the city like Millennium Recycling. They're asking for more. They actually have gone down in the amount of materials that are coming through.
Yeah.
And our community is growing and they're getting less material. And something's wrong with that because we know that there's still lots of recyclable goods that are heading to our landfills. We want to make our landfills last as long as we can. Therefore, we need to make sure that we are not filling those things up with things that can be recycled. And so that'll be an important thing. Then it comes to our water. We're seeing that with the Smithfield plant, even like what are we doing? We're seeing that when people are talking about data centers. Water is huge, right? What we do with that water and how we manage our water. Our wastewater treatment center, for example, the regional one, absolutely a fabulous, well thought out place. If you ever get a chance to tour that, I tell the community do it. It's absolutely amazing. But everything that we can do to stop items from getting to that on the front end, being responsible by the way that we design things, I think we have to do and encourage in our city.
I do want to ask specifically on the data center piece. What's your sort of philosophy on, obviously there's the technology development growth side of it. There's also citizens with concerns about water usage, electricity rates. How would you kind of marry those opposing forces?
Yeah, I mean, for business for certain, okay? That being said though, not at the expense of our citizens here in Sioux Falls, okay? So our water, again, number one concern. Our grid, a huge concern. Workforce noise, being a good neighbor, all of those things. And then also how much do we incentivize organizations like this to come here? It came down in this legislature this year to a vote. I voted against a 30-year sales tax break on these things. And I think that while data centers, I believe, will come to South Dakota, I don't know if the city in an urban area is the place for those to exist on a large scale.
Yeah. I want to talk about downtown. We got, just last night at council, they approved the tax increment financing plan. So we're, one step closer to Smithfield moving to the northwest side of town. That frees up a tremendous amount of space. They're calling it the Sanford District. What's your vision for that space? And maybe more importantly, how do you envision the community, or how do you want to approach the decision-making process?
Well, first of all, it's a very exciting time for Sioux Falls, having grown up in this community, living, I live in the north end. I've grown up, we used to have, in my district, District 15, we had the stockyards. We had John Mayoral at the time, now Smithfield, and we had the penitentiary. Well, half the penitentiaries leaving the stockyards left a long time ago, and moving Smithfield into a better location is all happening right now.
Yeah.
Now, we have to look at the short term, that's cleaning up the space and getting it ready, but then we have to look at what is this going to be? How do we best plan this for not just now, but 40 years and 100 years from now? We have to be forward thinking. That is not one person's vision and idea. That is a collective approach because it's not just my Sioux Falls, it's our Sioux Falls. Now, that being said, I do have plans, okay? One is the Sanford name, I understand, is put on it because of a large gift, and I totally respect that. I'd like to add another word after that, though, and I'd like it to be the Innovation District. I'd like this district to really point to that future, right? And every decision that we make within that is how can we do it in the best way moving forward, right? And so when it comes to opportunity in that district, be it for business, housing, recreation, all of it through the lens of innovation in our future. I think it could be just incredibly exciting for the next 100 years here in Sioux Falls.
Another big question mark hanging over downtown is the Riverline District. Are you supportive of a convention center downtown? And if so, in that location, in a different location, what do you want to see done with that property?
I am supportive of a convention center downtown. In the Riverline District, probably not now that we know there's other land available and going to be. I think in our future plan, I think that is something we have to really look at. One thing I'd really like to do across that river, one of my plans is for business incubators,
Cool.
where we can come in and provide entrepreneurs space for a short term, like 2 years perhaps, and then move. After that, they're expected to grow and move somewhere, and new people will get to do that, to continue to drive that, be that in the innovation district or be that across the river. Those are ideas for spaces like that.
Yeah. Well, we're sitting in Startup Sioux Falls. That feels kismet with that.
It certainly does.
I also want to ask you, so, as mayor, it's obviously a nonpartisan office. Sioux Falls is made up of a wide array of cultures and creeds and political beliefs. How do you plan to ensure that all of the citizens are represented in city decision making and that, you've got all those stakeholders at the table?
First of all, it starts by building relationships with the different communities here, and I've done that over the years throughout the legislature, whether it be a Muslim community, the Jewish community, a Hispanic community, African American community, all of the different groups that make Sioux Falls as rich as it is, having relationships in that. The second part of that then would be making sure that when we set up boards and when we set up things, that we have people from all parts of our community in those places. So it's not just a homogenized group of very, very like individuals, but that we pull different opinions into the space. I've always been better when I've surrounded myself with people that don't agree, because I love to have the discussion. And I think out of that discussion comes something even better when you bring people to the table that have differences of opinion. And that's okay. I think when we all bring ourselves fully into these conversations, we can find areas that we can get along, can understand, and will move things forward, again, for the betterment of all Sioux Falls. And so I really, really enjoy the fact that Sioux Falls is a community that embraces folks from all walks of life. And we're going to continue to do that moving forward and into the future, because we're better because of it.
Yeah. Jamie, I want to say thank you very much for hitting on this, range of topics with us. I also want to give you the opportunity to address voters ahead of Election Day. Are there any topics or priorities that I didn't ask you about that you wanted to chat about?
I mean, we could go on and on about different things, but as long as people know, I care deeply about this city. I'm a lifelong resident of this city, and my intention is to just be the very best mayor that I can be. That I care about families, I care about the workers, and whatever we can do to make people's lives better, we can do that. We didn't touch on these things. They're topics we need to in the future. Transportation issues, when it comes to that, when it comes to the transit, when it comes to affordability and childcare within our community, what we can do. We have a try-share program on that we could talk about for a long time. We could sit down and talk about ideas that we have, but ultimately we want a Sioux Falls that works for everyone, and that's what we're going to do.
Fantastic. I'm really glad you brought up childcare, because I'm realizing I skipped that question in my scan of this. I'm going to back up a little bit and ask, what role, if any, do you think the city should play in addressing the childcare crisis in Sioux Falls?
Well, first of all, it's acknowledging that we do have one, and we do.
Yeah.
Okay. There are people on the sidelines right now that want to work, and oftentimes that falls on the mother, and that's not fair.
Yeah.
We need to allow our city to work with businesses and the individuals. So again, if you go to my website, smithfromhere.com, you can find out, but we have a try-share program that we're working on implementing that the city is involved along with the business, along with the individual, to help bring down the cost of that, because we know there are people on the sidelines right now that want to work, but it just doesn't make any sense financially for them to do so. My family fell into that crack when my wife and I were both teaching. We had 2 young kids. My wife wanted to stay home with those kids for a couple of years because the childcare was just, it was crazy. And it's way worse now than it was when I had young children.
Yeah, it's not math I like to do in my own budget.
Yeah, it is scary. And then the other thing that we didn't talk about today, but after school programming is so important. Organizations like the Boys and Girls Club, MB, all of the different things, the YMCA, the different organizations that we work with to provide those opportunities. We know that by investing in children early, that we can help keep them out of prison in the future, right? And those troubles. And I'm on the recidivism task force.
Yeah.
I was on the prison task force. What are we going to do to invest in our future rather than be reactive to negative things? I'm excited as the mayor to be able to do that, to work on those forward-thinking programs that help our city grow into the future and provide a safe place for everybody, and recognizing that we can do it. The tools are there, but we have to make those things a priority.
Yeah. Jamie, again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your answers, and best of luck to you on the rest of your campaign.
I really appreciate the opportunity that you're making.
Yeah.